Weird, because I pressed the space bar.
Well, spacebar was probably highlighted over your mute button.
I, too, know what that means. No, I was just going to say, I still hate that my initials are BM, so when I'm looking at the agenda, it's just BM written out, and it's just really unfortunate still. And I don't have a middle name, so I can't go by anything else. It is just BM.
We could make a middle name for you right here on this episode.
We should leave that. We should take listener suggestions.
Listener suggestions for Beau's middle name. 1098765432 go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the MLS Now podcast. I'm your host, Russell. You can find me on social media at Mr. Danger Russ, but most importantly, you can find the podcast on social media at MLS Now Podcast. But even more important than that, of course, the thing that keeps everyone coming back, our most wonderful co-host, the co-hostess with the mostest. Of course, it's Beau. You can find him on social media at MLS Gamut. Beau, always a pleasure to have you on. Hello.
I didn't know I was going to be the co-hostess with the mostest. This is an honor. I should have had an acceptance speech ready. I'm sorry.
You should have.
Help me.
You should have.
Help me off guard.
Now,
I'm sorry. I won't be so off next time. Don't worry. I'll be prepared.
Well, I will let you know that I actually only accept acceptance speeches through Telegraph. So you will need to send that to me 3 weeks in advance via Telegraph. MoneyGram is an acceptable backup. If
is
you can't
Telegraph,
find
some weird like app thing, or like literally like do kind of thing?
Yeah, that one. Mm-hmm. That one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Telegram is the app you're thinking of. I do not accept that. I don't have that
on it.
Yep. Also not on Telegram, but he is on. He is on Twitter /X. You can find him at LionsBlog1. It's Gavin. Gavin, always wonderful to hear your dulcet tones, although just a reminder, you are muted right now, so if your dulcet tones are going, people won't hear you.
Don't you worry. I was not speaking on mute, and I don't need a reminder to come off mute, Russell. So, I'm a little salty about the co-hostess with the mostest. I know that was you were intentionally trying to trick me, so you ain't fooling me.
You know, here's the crazy part, Gavin. I initially led in thinking I was going to go to you first, but I saw Beau's face light up, and I'm like, I'm not taking this away from Beau.
Okay, I mean, at that point, I got to give it to you. That makes sense. I appreciate your explanation.
I mean, how could you possibly take that joy away from Beau?
You can't. So fair enough.
Yeah. Well, gents, as we said before, you know, no Bryce, no David. You know, I want to let the listeners know you won't hear either of their voices on this podcast because they hate us and they're never going to be on any episodes ever again. So, of course, you know, at least not for this week. But very happy to have the two of you on here because we have a lot to talk about. And you know what, guys, I just want to throw a shotgun blast of, hey, talk about anything you want on this topic. CONCACAF Champions Cup last week / going into this week, a lot of surprisingly poor performances, I would say, especially from the MLS sides that were in there. Any thoughts on any of those games in particular, and or thoughts on just the round as a whole? If you have no thoughts, that's also okay, because, you know, let's be honest, these are Tuesday night matches. And like, who has time for Tuesday night matches? Not many people, going off the attendance numbers at some of these matches.
One thing I do just want to say, rather than any specific thing, but I think it's a thing that's easily forgot with this Champions League, is that every other club that's going on in this is mid-season form, and this is like still like preseason. So I think it's really easy. You know, there's a lot of MLS teams underperforming this and that, but like, man, some of these guys have literally only been playing together for weeks. And so I think it's always been the disadvantage of MLS in this competition, is that the time to gel just isn't there, which is why everyone was making such a big deal, you know, about Seattle staying mostly intact and adding depth. But I feel like that's just a really important thing before we, you know, harp on all these MLS teams and everything like that, that everyone else is in mid-season form and we're just now scratching the surface.
Very fair.
I think that's well said. I think there was a lot of disappointing performances, even though you're saying you're giving a good explanation why. But I'm gonna keep it on the positive side. Vancouver getting a home draw against Monterrey. It's not um, it's not looking like they're going to go through because Monterrey got the away goal,
And
but
Ryan Gold is out.
and Ryan Gold went out over the weekend, unfortunately. But Monterrey are a very good team. They would have expected to get the win in Vancouver. And it's just another really positive performance and result for the Vancouver Whitecaps. They are having a great season, so wanted to give them a quick shout out.
Yeah, a great shout for Vancouver, and they continue to have not just, the CONCACAF side, but the MLS side, and I'm looking forward to talking about their MLS match here later on in the show. Any predictions? Like, do you foresee any MLS sides upsetting in the away leg? I mean, I think LA Galaxy is one that has a home leg this week, but Cincinnati is away at Tigres, Seattle's away in Monterrey. There's one other that I'm forgetting that's away as well.
Seattle Cruz Azul, Vancouver Monterrey, and
Oh yeah. Vancouver, Monterrey, Seattle's
Cincinnati
at Cruz Azul. That's
Tigres.
The one, yeah.
Okay, I'll take this one first. If anybody's gonna upset away from home, I like Cincinnati to do it. I think that Tigres isn't the best of this bunch of Mexican teams. I think it's Monterrey, Cruz Azul, and then Tigres. And so I'm going to go with Cincinnati to away from home. Maybe it's like another 1-1 and you guys, or a 2-2 or something like that. You guys get through on away goals, something like that. Or you get like a 1-0 somehow. But I like Cincinnati's odds.
Take it. Yeah.
I don't necessarily have. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to make a prediction on this, but I will say that I am praying every single night now that Cavalier. Can you imagine Cavalier knocking out Miami in Jamaica? Like what that was. I mean, could you imagine the memes and everything that would happen? So yeah, because I'm not going to lie, I really enjoy chaos. Like I am Captain Chaos. Like chaos it's amazing. So that would be the most chaotic thing, and I hope more than anything that that's what happens.
I'm on board for that. And I'll tell you right now, that would break a million parlays in the sports betting world, because probably every single CONCACAF parlay right now is like, oh yeah, Miami away, easy. Yeah, but Gavin, I'm going to sit with you on this one and maybe even go a little more conservative. I think out of your Mexican sides, I think every single one of those sides win out, personally.
I mean, probably that's just the trend. And if MLS wants to have more success in this competition, they're going to have to turn that trend around. But it's a very low percentage likelihood based on history.
Russell stepping out on a limb, claiming that the Mexican sides will win at home. I like the bold prediction, man.
It's a bold prediction. I'll tell you what, normally we love to go with home slant inside of MLS, but, we're going to stick with home slant when it's outside of MLS as well. Who would have thought? Anyways, okay, guys, enough about Champions Cup, because much like the rest of the league, if you're not in Champions Cup, most people probably aren't paying attention to it. So we're going to pay attention to things that people do pay attention to by talking about the actual league itself. Man, oh man. Side note, I always forget how many matches there are in a weekend now that we have 30 teams in here. Oh my gosh. So anyways, we're going to kick it off. We're going to get a nice, simple, easy one out of the way. It was a Columbus versus Houston 0-0 draw. I'll tell you right now, I watched this. I wish I didn't watch it.
Yeah, quite a boring match. And another Columbus game. So we're starting to see a trend of this. Another Columbus game where they dominate possession. They don't really threaten too much. They don't really get a ton of big chances. And this time they didn't get the goal. Against New England, they did, fashion a chance and get the goal. This time at home, they don't. Houston Dynamo were super aggressive in this game. and didn't really let Columbus get past them at all. For the most part, only one time when Farsi got in, and he should have done better with that chance. And it was from I think it was from a goal kick or something, or a goal punch or something crazy like that, just a long ball. So for the most part, a pretty boring game. And Columbus are looking a little toothless in attack this year thus far.
Well, if you give up very few goals, if you're like Seattle and you can just consistently give up under 30, 35 goals a season, it may not matter how toothless or toothful your attack is if you only ever need one goal.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing to remember. Last season alone, Cucho Hernandez had 8 game-winning goals by himself. 8 game-winning goals. That is not an insignificant amount. It was only beat by Bawanga, who had 9. And from what I'm hearing with Tom Bogert, they are actively trying to replace him. But, that stuff doesn't happen overnight. And they weren't really expecting or planning for Cucho to go. The deal just kind of came pretty quickly. But yeah, and I think that this is a perfect reason. This is the kind of game that Cucho Hernandez makes the difference, and you get 3 points versus 1.
Yeah, very fair shout. And I'll be honest, I don't know how they find someone on this short notice. I think they're going to be stuck in this position till summer.
I've heard that they're linked to someone down in South America who kind of fits that same profile as Cucho Hernandez, because Cucho was kind of a 9.5, right? He wasn't your traditional 9. He was like in between a 9 and a 10. And apparently they've got their eyes on the guy down in South America who fits that same profile. I don't know where they are in the deal or anything like that, or if that's even the main guy they're going for. But I at least know that it seems like that the profile that they're targeting is that kind of 9.5 role.
Yeah. Well, that said, 0-0 match. I don't have much else to say about this. Beau, Gavin, anything else to add before we move on?
Yeah, just on Houston. I think this is again just Houston's been in cap trouble for a while. As soon as Pat Onstad took over that job several years ago, he's had quite a bit of work to do, and they're still not quite out of it. But I think that this just goes to show really how important this game showed, how important Mikhail was to that team. Losing him at center back was huge because, I mean, the field was heavily tilted one way. It seemed like the ball was just rolling downhill towards the Houston half, and the defense was just scrambling. I mean, they went in, they got the job done. They went into Columbus, and they got a point. It wasn't pretty, but they got a point. So I guess that does say something about, Ben Olsen, them being able to do it. But, yeah, it was not pretty, to say the least.
Yeah. Hey, we'll talk about them at the end of the episode, but on the topic of cap trouble, LA Galaxy, exactly $0 in GAM. So there
Spoiler
you go.
alert.
I mean, yeah, you can't get any worse than them. All right. That said, this next match is the non-cap trouble LA team. You've got Seattle versus LAFC. Is a 5-2 win for Seattle. Was not on my bingo card. I can't imagine it was on anyone's bingo card. Side note, Jordan Morris had a goal in this match, became the all-time leading goal scorer for Seattle. This was an interesting one because this almost felt like a match where I look at it and it's like, what do you want from your players for Seattle? And Beau, I'm gonna use like a guy like Jesus Ferreira, where they've built a lot of depth. I don't know if a 5-2 win over LAFC is like a sustainable win, or if this was a night of every single thing went right, mixed with also LAFC having some pretty shaky defending on the night.
That's a really great question. I think the thing to remember on this is that, so Seattle kept their group mostly intact. What they did was they kept their guys, but they went out and they got depth. And this is why they went out and got depth. When LAFC is having to rotate their guys, Seattle is bringing in starting level caliber guys off the bench to take their place. And this is why everyone was so high on Seattle going throughout the year. So is it sustainable for the whole season? I don't know. But I mean, they were going up against a team that is playing midweek games in CONCACAF. And so this is the exact reason why they went out and did it and why everyone heralded it as a great success. And they literally went out the first chance they had to do it, and then went out and proved exactly why they went out and do it, why this is somewhat sustainable. And that's the thing you even have to remember. Come July, August, when the injury bug starts hitting teams, these guys, they're not going to be reaching down and getting, insert. I don't want to throw any player under the bus, but, Joe Bob off of the bench. They're going to be able to be like, all right, Jesus Ferreira, Paul Arriola, Paul Rothrock, Nuhu, you guys, you're all starting. Like, I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. 2 years ago it was Obed Vargas, and now, I mean, it's just like it's a consistent pipeline, feels like, for Seattle. The other question I want to throw your way, and maybe we can let Gavin take this one. I believe Pedro de la Vega got injured in this match, and TBD on a time for return, but seeing guys like, for instance, Albert Rusnak, who was a huge key contributor for Seattle. It's like Rusnak is seemingly much more of the facilitator creator of De La Vega. Like, if you're a Seattle fan, granted you are the furthest person from Seattle in this recording, but if you're a Seattle fan, like, are you starting to become worried about Pedro de la Vega? Are you saying, did we maybe make a bad signing? Have we just not found the guy's spot? Like, where should the jury be sitting?
I think it's so hard because last year started off with injury troubles that really carried through the whole season, and he must have been playing in pain last season. He just must have been, because he'd come back from injury, he'd re-injure, he'd come back from injury, he'd play for a while, he'd pick up little things here and there. He just didn't look 100%. This season he started off and he looked more at it. He's had a good start to the season overall. He hasn't been, lights out scoring hat tricks or anything, but he's got a couple goals. He's been impactful, created a couple chances. And now he goes off with an injury. So I think the concern for me is more the physical capability of the player versus, is he good enough? I think at full fitness, he probably is good enough. Now the concern is are we ever going to see it? And from the last season and a few games here, the answer is no. We're never going to see him at full fitness.
Beau, anything else to weigh in on that one, considering you are the closest geographically to Seattle of those of us in the call?
Yeah, me and Pedro de la Vega, good friends. One thing, I mean, this
next door neighbor, practically.
Yeah, exact, practically. Yeah. One thing to remember, this is not an isolated incident. Whenever they signed him, the whole thing was, man, this guy's got a pretty bad injury history. And look, there are some players who are incredibly talented that just can't stay healthy. I mean, honestly, like, you could legit make a case that maybe the most talented player in U.S. men's national team history would be Gio Reyna, and the guy's hamstrings are made of glass. So some guys who are just really good, man, he may just be one of those guys. Hopefully it's not. I mean, he's still young. Hopefully that Seattle has a pretty good track record of being able to keep their guys healthy and kind of managing the load. So hopefully not, but I think Gavin may have hit the nail on the head of this one. On this one, I'm kind of like, that may have been $7 million just flushed right down the toilet.
Yeah, I'm mostly there with you at this point, just from my perspective, because I don't know. I don't like the pattern. Once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, or 3 times is a pattern. Is that what it is? Or 3 times is a trend?
Well, and just even based on last year, you can't assume you're going to get anything out of him. I mean, at this point, so if he is healthy, that is kind of on a bright note for you Sounders fans listening. If you get anything out of him, that's pretty good. Like, if he comes back healthy, in 2-3 months, it's like getting a brand new player, because you can't really depend or rely on him.
Yeah. The part that scares me about that is we've seen how teams do when they don't hit on DPs in this league.
Well, what I was going to throw in there is, lucky for them, they have DP caliber players that are not on a DP tag sitting on their bench because they just have so much quality. So if there's one team that this can happen to in this 2025 season, it's Seattle Sounders.
Very fair. Just quick thoughts on LAFC. Interesting to see Giroud start on the night. It almost tells me that it's Ebobase's spot to lose at this point if LAFC are rotating and you see Giroud running out there for the majority of the match, which is, I think some of us could have seen that coming. I mean, Ebobase has been a phenomenal player in MLS. We lauded LAFC for the signing of Ebobase, and we said they just do the obvious things, but they're the right things to do. Just very interesting to me that Ebobase is now almost the heir apparent for the striker position there, despite after all this time and, bringing in Giroud. And you could say like, oh, and maybe Griezmann's going to go there. Is that going to change anything? I don't think so. I think it's Ebobase's spot.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The system doesn't fit Giroud, and they don't look like attempting to change the system so that it will fit Giroud. So it feels kind of like a bust right now that Giroud's going to be a backup striker in MLS.
Didn't think I'd see the day. All right. Well, let me keep moving us along here. We're going to go to a riveting and not at all unexpected 2-0 win for Philadelphia over the New England Revolution. They went away from home. I think most of us picked Philadelphia going into this weekend. We actually have, Gavin, I don't know if you have them pulled up, we actually have 2 correspondent corners. One from either side of the aisle on this match, if you want to bring those in real quick just to kick us off.
Yeah, let's start with the winners. Let's start with Philadelphia Union from Ben Brecher. He says the Union are 3-0-0 for the first time in club history. Under new head coach Bradley Carnell, the Union have found a new identity as they continue to commit to a high-pressing form of play. Ty Baribo continues to be the man in form, netting another goal, bringing his total to 6 goals in 3 games this season, and 22 goals in his last 25 games in all competitions. Danley and Lukic are slowly proving to be one of the best midfield partnerships in the league as well. Most importantly, the Union got a clean sheet, spearheaded by Gallese and Macanha's defensive contributions. Like that from Ben. Let me go find Matt. So, Matt Glenn from New England Revolution. The Revolution are winless in 3, so the complete opposite, with 0 goals on the season. By my estimate, no more than 2,500 fans braved the sub-freezing temps to support their team and started slowly trickling out when Philadelphia went up 1-0 in the 76th minute. Social media is on fire, calling for a coaching and administrative clear-out. In November 2021, over 25,000 fans endured sub-freezing temperatures to watch an exciting Revs team in a record-setting season start to the playoffs. 4 years later, we've got this. What's next?
A good question. Beau, what's next?
What's next for New England? Okay.
Is anything next?
That was for New England. Okay. So listen, I found a little bit of interesting research that Matt Doyle dropped over the weekend. So I want you guys to listen to this about Caleb Porter. Now, look, I have been saying for a long time, I'm not a Caleb Porter fan. Listen to this. So far this year, the Revs have 1 point and no goals through 3 games. All right. And now, granted, they've lost 2 of their last home games, but they were against 2 pretty good teams. All right. So listen, their upcoming schedule is this in order. They are at New York City. They host the Red Bulls, at Cincinnati, at Atlanta, host New York City, and then at Charlotte. Ladies and gentlemen, it is entirely feasible that this team can be winless up until the month of May. I mean, this is bad. And when I talked about Caleb Porter, he has the second lowest points per game of any coach in MLS history, and he has over 10 plus seasons. Sorry, with 10 plus seasons in charge. That is very important. Clarify, all right? So second lowest points per game with any coach of over 10 seasons in charge. Also, if you look at the crew teams that he did horribly with in 2021 and 2022, when Wilfred Nancy came in, those teams were pretty much mostly unchanged. They were about 90% the same when he won MLS Cup with them. Not only that, but think about this. He had second lowest points per game of any coach in MLS history with 10 plus seasons, and he had prime Diego Chara and Diego Valeri. in that as well. So Caleb Porter is just not a good coach in this league. I mean, the stats back it up. The only one who hasn't beat in points per game is Ben Olsen. And if you look at, do you know what Ben Olsen would have done if he had Diego Valeri, Diego Char, and DC United when he was there? I mean, so the whole Ben Olsen thing is a completely separate, tangent topic. But again, I'm just going to say it, folks. If you're a New England fan, which to be fair, I like New England, right? I like watching them. But as long as Caleb Porter is in charge there is no hope for this team. So Robert Kraft, if you're listening, if you want to save your seasons, Caleb Porter out the door with a box in his hands with all of his belongings.
Pronto. Yeah, I think that's a mind-blowing stat there, the second worst of all time. But for New England, I think that's clear. That's their next step, Russell. For Philadelphia, though, this game could have been 4-5-0. I mean, they were all over New England Revolution. They just didn't quite put away their chances. But 2-0 away from home, that's nothing to complain about on the Philadelphia side. By the way, for Philadelphia, did you guys see that initially they called it an own goal for Baribo's goal?
I did not see that.
I was looking on Google and they had it as an own goal. And I think they still have it as an own goal for the New England defender. But like MLS counts it as Baribo. You go and watch the highlight and it looks like it's Baribo's header. So I'd be shocked if they don't give it to him. And then FotMob as well. FotMob had it as Baribo's goal, but then you go on the MLS stats page and they say Baribo only has 5 goals. So I think they switched it and they haven't fully fixed it in their system yet. So I think there's some back and forth on the goal itself, whether it's Baribo's or not. But either way, Baribo's the one who puts the contact in to put it towards the goal, and he is absolutely on fire right now. I'm counting as his goal because he's in my Golden Boot team. So 6 goals in 3 games for the striker. He has been incredible.
One thing I will say, so as a Philadelphia Union guy, I want to tell the fans, enjoy this while it lasts. High pressing, high intensity teams always start off well. Always. They tend to kind of run away. Remember when St. Louis set the league on fire, and then after that they averaged about a point per game for the last half of the season. And this is the exact same coach. Look, the New York Red Bulls were always, up until last year when Sandro Schwartz took over, they were always a great regular season team. And then when it came to the playoffs, they were run into the ground. They were too tired. And then it wasn't until last year when Sandro Schwartz came in and actually had them playing a little bit different, not as high intensity. But I will say for Philadelphia, enjoy this. All right. And I'm not saying it will, but I'm saying that based on what happens in history, there's probably going to be a fall off at the back half of the year, and this team could kind of limp in towards the playoffs. Just like, same coach, literally, this, you have to admit, this is exactly what we saw with St. Louis, right? Am I the only one that thinks that?
No, it's Beau. Not only did you read my mind, you said almost word for word what I wanted to say. You were just quicker to the mic, and I was like, oh my gosh, this man.
My bad.
But Carnell...
If there was a script, I would assume that Beau had stolen it.
Carnell is a human, guys. Like, he can learn from the past.
Is he?
I don't know with this play. He can learn from his experience with St. Louis and reflect on it and say, yeah, I pushed the guys a little too hard in that first season and they gassed out. Is it going to happen? I don't know, because a lot of coaches do tend to be stuck in their ways, but maybe he's one of the outliers that will learn and tweak, and Philadelphia will sustain.
Hey, counterpoint to this. Caleb Porter is allegedly a human who could learn from his mistakes as well, and yet second worst of all time with 10 plus seasons in MLS. So
one of the stats I didn't get into, did you know that he's never made the playoffs back-to-back seasons before? Ever.
Did they make it last year?
And Olsen, who has the worst points per game, has made it 8 out of 13 seasons, while Caleb has only done it 4 out of 10.
Incredible.
Insane. And he keeps getting jobs.
It's those 2 MLS Cups that he's shithoused.
Yeah.
Well, when you have prime Diego Valeri, Diego Chara, and one I forgot, Darlington Nagbe, you should probably win something.
Well, I'm going to help our listeners be winners on this one. I'm going to move us away from talking about Caleb Porter. Instead, we're going to talk about NYCFC versus Orlando City. Gavin was jubilant to watch this match. He was, and I have it from a reliable source, that he was attending one of the largest watch parties in the Orlando City fandom. Everyone there hopeful, optimistic. Gavin, how did that go?
Yeah, obviously not great. We lost 2-1, and the main takeaway from this match in Orlando City world is all eyes on Pedro Gallese, who had a pretty rough match overall. I know when we talk about goalkeepers, we usually talk about one moment, but throughout the match, he was pretty nerve-wracking to watch. There were multiple times where it just looked like the communication was off between him and his defenders. And like there was an instance where the ball was trickling across the 6-yard box, and he's like running after it, and then he doesn't tell his defender to kick it away, and the defender doesn't kick it away because the defender decides to shield, but the defender misses the shield, and so they almost got the toe poked the ball in off of that, but luckily Gallese got there just in the nick of time. And so that was like poor communication, a couple of weak punch outs, and then obviously the second goal. I mean, right after we score the equalizer, they go up the field, and it's like a minute or two later, first attack since we score, and he does that weak punch out straight to whoever it was who put the cross in for Wolf. And it's just like, are you kidding me? Like we just came back at Yankee Stadium. We struggle at Yankee Stadium. And we get to 1-1 and we're like, okay, maybe we can push on and win this game. Like maybe we can sneak something. And no, we just gift them a goal. It's down 2-1. It's like, okay, that's game over. So the Pedro Gallese frustration is really starting to mount with this performance, and that's the main takeaway from an Orlando City perspective.
Hey, before we forget, we do also have correspondent corners on this match. Maybe do you want to dive into Coach Joe's perspective on NYCFC, and then we can grab Gary as well to loop us back around on Orlando.
Yeah, let's do that. So Joe's for NYCFC, he says, gosh, this is going to suck reading this. He says, home cooking never tastes so good. Vibes, nostalgia, and aura with a dash of brick. A cold night in the Bronx for the home opener and 10th anniversary of NYCFC's first ever game versus the same opponent, Mickey Mouse. Oh, Orlando City SC. Some alumni dropped by to kick things off with MLS Cup champion Tony Victory Cigar Rocha, RJ Allen, Quadwo Poku, and Andrea No Pirlo No Party Pirlo. Vibes were high, nostalgia aplenty. It's been a hell of a 10 years, man. Maxi doinks one off the post and is cleaned up by the Tico Alonso Martinez. Orlando City pull one back. Pigeons answer right back right away with a right-footed cross from Julian Fernandez off a save to Hans Wolf, who nods it past a scrambling Gallese. First win of 2025. Let's keep it rolling into next match. Pascal the Rascal, first win as a manager of NYCFC. One opposition note. Gallese looks very mortal, which is a bad omen for Orlando City. So even the opponents can see it. And then Gary, from an Orlando City perspective, says, similar to the start of last year, Orlando City is having issues at the back. Even though Robin Janssen is back in the lineup, there's no doubt they're missing Duncan McGuire either as a late sub or as a starter, which I also agree with.
Short and to the point on that one. Yeah, man, with Gallese, like it's been kind of, man, I have something to say, but I'm not sure. I'm just gonna say it, whatever. All right, so I play goalkeeper, right? Like in my league, I used to be striker, but now I'm too old, too fat, so I'm in goal. I like it, right? A lot of the stuff that Gallese does it reminds me, it's like it's like stuff I see like that I do or that other people do, is that he's just reacting. It's like he's not thinking. Like whenever he goes, the second goal, I believe it was, he just parries it kind of out in the middle. Like he makes a save, but every single goalkeeper knows, like, first of all, that shot came in soft enough that I could have caught it, which I feel like is something like, that's a judge for me. Like, if I feel like I probably should have caught it, then I darn sure know that a professional level goalkeeper should have caught it. But instead, he parries it out. He doesn't get it far enough out to the side like you're supposed to, right? You get it out of the middle. And it's like, again, he's just reacted. He's not thinking, oh, I can catch this ball, this and that. So I don't know and look, here's the thing, right? Like Gavin mentioned about, players are human. Who knows if things are going on in his personal life? Like who knows? Honestly, I don't know. But it seems like that his head isn't there. Like he's not really present in the game.
We won't get into it, but Gallese does have a history of personal issues. But yeah.
And we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
And for NYCFC, the only thing I wanted to say, first of all, if you're a fan, that is your home club, I feel really sorry if you have to watch them play on that field for over half the games. I mean, it is some of the worst aesthetics. It's like almost unwatchable for me. When FC Dallas played there last year, I was like, I don't know if I actually even want to finish this game. It's so aesthetically unpleasing. But anyway, Kevin O'Toole with the dumbest red card. I mean, the second yellow, like the guy, dude, it was at midfield. And you already have a yellow. Why are you grabbing him and trying to like throw him backwards for a strategic foul? Like, what even is going through your mind? Like, that was one of the most boneheaded second yellows that I've seen in a really long time. We need a segment of the week, bonehead move of the day.
Yeah, that one wins.
Move of the week. And this week, Kevin O'Toole, congratulations.
And it was on a 16-year-old. Like, I'm not sure he's going to be doing much. Sorry. So, really stupid.
I had, this is giving me a great idea as a time fill segment at the end if we have time for it. I'll throw that your way if we get there and have time. But I am going to also move us towards the end by moving us over to Cincinnati versus Toronto. Most of us, I think, would have picked Cincinnati going into this match. Toronto is not in a good spot right now. I described them as a very poor defensive team, and they indeed did not look very strong at all. Cincinnati largely, I would say halfway rotated for in anticipation of Champions Cup. Evander played 30 minutes. You saw Kevin Denke starting, but the talisman, the dude, continues to score. He got a goal in this match as well off a penalty kick that Evander created later in the match. And then as well, you also saw a very, very impressive looking Pavel Buka. Beau and I, actually, we were talking about it in the group chat, Beau, and Pavel Buka has really taken a step forward this season. And he looked it on the night. So prior to Evander coming in, Buka was making some phenomenal through balls. Didn't matter these weren't, 40-yard across the field switches. I mean, very smart, well-placed, well-weighted through balls into dangerous positions, especially forward, progressive into the box. And I was like, yes, like good. Like we need someone who isn't the star creative playmaker who can do some sort of work like that. So it continues to really impress. And that was honestly the standout player, the stock rising guy on the night for me was probably Pavel Buka. And then, as well, like Yuya Kubo had a goal called off for an elbow that was thrown by a player, and then he had a goal called off for an offsides, and then he finally got a goal, third try is a charm. But I'm going to be honest, after the first goal, like, you knew Cincinnati was winning this over Toronto. They're not in a good spot right now.
Did it not feel like a little bit of a lifeline whenever Cincinnati got that PK? Because it just seemed like they weren't able to get that final pass to get the quality look at goal all game.
I would say he historically in Cincinnati seemed to really love those marginal goals where it's like, hey, we score that 5 out of 10 times. It's just today we got all the 5 out of 10 where we don't score it, and then we seem to do that every single match. So I don't know if I would call it a lifeline, because the possession, like Cincinnati were very, very good in possession. Now, granted, it's against Toronto. Don't read too much into that. But, they were good in possession. I felt like they did enough to deserve at least a goal. 2 goals on the night was probably the right scoreline. How they got it with the help of a penalty, I think they did enough in open play to probably warrant 2 goals.
One thing, just so someone talks on Toronto for the one fan that listens or 2 fans, I do not understand this Lorenzo Insigne being iced out thing. Look, you agreed to pay the guy, like that. That's just how contracts work, right? Like, you agreed to pay the guy. You can't be mad when he's like, "Nah, I think I want to stay here." Like, hey, maybe he and his family genuinely like it there. That's actually what I've heard. But to just ice him out, like, okay, yeah, he's injured, stuff like that. But you're telling me that Lorenzo Insigne there in the middle as a 10, playing through balls to Tyrese Spicer or something, isn't going to get you chance on goal? Because listen, what they're doing right now is not working. And they have a guy who at least has a history of being a world-class player, or has the potential to be a world-class player. Those days are probably behind him. But you have that guy just sitting there, just wanting to play soccer and not being able to. I think some people in Toronto need to get their heads out of their butts and maybe start thinking with their heads and not their feelings.
Yeah, I'll tell you as well, the other thing that stood out to me in terms of players was Sean Johnson as well. Looked similar to Gallese down there in Orlando. Johnson looked very mortal as well. He was parrying a lot of shots. And what stood out to me was all of these long distance shots where they just kind of laced it as hard as they could at Johnson. Like, those all turned into very scoreable rebounds. One of them ended up in the back of the net, just got, chalked off due to, in theory, an elbow that I will admit, even on watching back, I'm still not 100% certain how much I love that call. But either way, yeah, Beau, to your point earlier, like, some of the shots from distance, they looked very catchable. And when the go-to is a parry, it's just, I don't know. You're opening up a lot of chaos in the box when you don't parry that ball all the way out.
It's not the smart choice.
Well, that's because it's Sean Johnson, not Ilie Sanchez.
That's fair. Yes.
All right. Sean Johnson probably uses Goodyear.
He strikes me as a Pirelli guy, personally.
We can move on.
All right. We are moving on. We're moving on to talk about DC United versus Sporting Kansas City. Oh boy. Tough times in the Sporting Kansas City world. I mean, it's a 2-1 win for DC United. And I don't know who Sporting Kansas City is looking at on their schedule and saying, yes, this next match is very winnable. DC was the one that I was looking at. I was like, this is where you can make the turn, right? Like, this is where you find your momentum. So we do have a correspondent corner as well from Travis. This one coming in off the Discord. Gavin, you don't have Discord, if I recall correctly.
Well, I have Discord, but you just haven't added me to the MLS Now Discord. So,
well,
it's all on you.
The link has been sent to you multiple times. That it's at this point, I can lead you to water, but I can't make you drink, Gavin. But Travis says, although it was nice to see them in person and meet David, there's not a lot to take from this game that inspires confidence for the future. Our attack is still impotent. Manu Garcia looks skilled, but he lacks bite where it counts. Logan Ndenbe was hesitant to push forward with open field in front of him. It was interesting that Joaquin Fernandez and Danny Rosero were paired for the first half. They're our 2 best and newest center backs, but they never had actually played together until this last weekend. There were some openings for DC, but Sporting Kansas City managed to keep DC off the scoreboard while they were together. Ends it with a very time-honored and true statement from Travis. Sporting Kansas City needs fresh ideas and a new coach.
Shout out to Travis for working impotent into a thing. Anytime you can work that into a conversation. Love it.
Yeah, Beau, I mean, how are you sitting on this one? I mean, Travis is low on SKC, right? Do you wanna talk anything DC United in David's stead?
Uh, you know what, Travis? I'm going to help you out here. Listen, I I think it was last year, Sporting KC. Maybe it was last year. Maybe it was 2 years ago. I can't remember. Time. Um, they had a god awful start, like more horrendous. I think it was 2 years ago, and then they ended up catching on, making it to the playoffs. Look, this is not the first time that Peter Vermees has looked like he's out of his depth and that he's not competent. All right, look, I'm not like a Peter Vermees truther, right? Like I'm not a big Vermees guy, so don't get me twisted on that. But what I'm saying is, like, after what he has done in the past, where his teams have looked this bad and he's turned it around, he at least deserves the benefit of the doubt. And listen, dude, and the thing I am having to remind myself, it's week 3. It is a long season. And look, let's just be real. It doesn't matter how you play in week 3. It just matters. It's just about every team makes the playoffs. It only matters how good you are getting into the playoffs. So I would be much more concerned if they're playing like this towards the end of the season. But, I mean, I do see the point with Travis and where is the hope. And for that, I'm going to pass it on to Gavin.
Gavin doesn't have the answers. Gavin, we won't make you have to come up with the answers because anything that you say would be a lie for the purposes of where's the hope.
No, they invested. It's just about finding the right system for this group of players, and that definitely takes time. To your point, it's week 3, but how much is Peter Vermees willing to change his system? Not a lot. As I see shaking heads from both of you on my
Rules of
screen.
soccer will change before Peter Vermees changes anything.
Right. So
the rules of soccer have changed according to IFAB, and
yeah. So that's it on SKC side. I do want to give DC some credit. They looked pretty good in this game. They do go 1-0 down. I think that was against the run of play. They created a lot of chances though before that and after that, and they just weren't very clinical. And as that's the worrying thing about SKC is they were 1-0 up away from home, and they give up the stupid penalty. I don't know why he's lunging in there. Just that's another boneheaded moment. He clearly thought he was going to win the ball, but he was so late. It was like, what were you doing? But then the second goal, oh my gosh. When people say defending in MLS needs to improve, like usually they're kind of being dramatic. Usually they're being dramatic. But in this instance, no one is moving. It's a quick throw in down by the corner flag. It gets passed out. The team kind of jogs up. It was clear that they needed a second to take a breath, to take a break, and they thought that throw in was going to be it. And DC just went a little too quick for the SKC defense. And it's just an early cross. Kojima makes a not even a late run. He's the only person making a run into the box. No one tracks him, and it's a free header, and it's the game-winning goal. I'm sure Peter Vermees is lighting his defense and midfield up for that moment. No one tracked him. No one put a challenge on him. Just watched him go into the box, watched the ball come in. No one even went to really try and close down the crosser. It's terrible from SKC defensively. DC capitalize and win 2-1.
Hey, you know what, Gavin? I will give some credit to SKC in the sense that I'm pretty sure the defender that could have stopped Kojima was standing way too far back, marking a Benteke who was like 85% of the highlights for this match. If you go back and rewatch them, the vast majority of these opportunities are Christian Benteke making some really brilliant, well-timed run, and just the final ball like either being just out of reach or just a little late, or like that man is such an elite striker still. It is unbelievable.
Yes, but there was a man on Benteke, and you watch Kojima run past a midfielder. You watch him
look,
run past the midfielder, and the midfielder's just standing there.
I'm not going to defend the midfielder.
Yeah.
For the record, zero.
And
defense
the other
for
defender?
the midfielder.
What's the other defender doing? Like,
which is
terrible.
weird, Russell, because your nickname is Russell, the midfield defender of MLS now.
That's true. That it's well known and well established that is my MLS Now nickname. But sometimes you just got to call it like you see it. And this one,
you got to pick your spots, man.
Yeah, you got to pick your hills to die on. This isn't one that I'm dying on. All right, hey, you know what? I've had enough of DC United. I've had more than enough of SKC, but unfortunately, there's still 31 more matches to go. So we will continue to talk about them in the next episode. We're instead going to move on to talk about Austin versus Colorado. Gavin, please tell me how both of us are visionaries for picking Colorado to win this. You are muted, by the way, but you told me earlier that you didn't need to be reminded to be muted.
No, I can't. When I said it, I was like, I'm going to do it this episode. I never do it, but this would be the one, and here we are. Well, anyways, Austin haven't looked great this season, and Colorado, they look like a complete team. They look like a competent team that will win a lot of games this season. I totally underestimated Colorado and how good they would be this season. And Austin, on the other hand, they had their moments in this game. They got a little unlucky with the penalty being offside. But, at the end of the day, it happens. And they hit the post, I think. They forced a good save out of Stefan. But I don't know. I think Colorado just looked like a much more competent team at the moment, so that's why they were my pick.
They were my pick as well, as I said earlier, and we look very smart in hindsight. I think it's interesting because there were certainly, Beau's over here, pushing glasses up on his nose, and that's exactly us. But if Gavin had glasses, he would be pushing them up as well, but he doesn't. So, anyways, there was some optimism about Austin going into the season. And Beau, I want to ask you this question. Do you think the optimism is fading for Austin, or should people still be patient and say it's only week 3?
I think it's only week 3. Whenever you get an all new, like when you get a bunch of shiny new toys like Austin did, you are like, oh my gosh, it's going to be awesome, right? You have all this optimism. But in order to play at the highest levels and to score goals, there needs to be a chemistry. And chemistry is a word that is kind of thrown around a lot, right? But these guys, it's learning. When I pass this way, how do they like to receive a pass? What are they more likely to do in this runs? I mean, if you watch Vancouver play, Ryan Gauld and Brian White communicate almost telepathically, right? Like they just know what each other's going to do because they've played together for so long, and that takes time. And so you can take all the shiny new toys you want to put them on a field. I mean, just look at the MLS All-Star game, right? I mean, you throw these guys out there, there's just no chemistry, right? It's just 11 dudes just being dudes. There's no team. And it's just going to take time with this. So I think if you're an Austin fan, look, quality always rises to the top, right? Like these are all quality guys who have proven track records. Just chill, let these guys, just let these guys cook. Something tasty will pop out, I'm sure.
Well, Beau knows better than Gavin or I how delicious food in Texas can be. So
probably barbecue base, which will be awesome.
Well, ship some up this way, or over to Gavin, I guess, if you want to share with him. That said, Gavin, any other thoughts on this one before I move us on? As I think we've said all we need to say. I mean, Colorado, just good side.
Yeah, Navarro's just been in good form, and it's a little surprising to see it continue, but it keeps coming. He keeps scoring goals, so I'm gonna look forward to watching him play every week and keep scoring.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's talk about a match that I personally wanted to look forward to, which is Atlanta versus New York Red Bulls. And I was thinking to myself, ooh, Latte Loth, Almiron, they've got Muyumba in midfield. And I was like, they're running out a pretty primo lineup, 0-0 at the end there. To quote Bryce, who I think said in our group chat, very on brand for Atlanta to completely dominate the first half and have absolutely nothing to show for it. And if that doesn't sum up that match and probably more of Atlanta's matches yet to come this season, I don't know what does. I don't know what does. I don't know what the. Anyways, Atlanta, poor performance to not get a win.
Best chance of the night fell to New York Red Bulls too. Like it's not like Atlanta were breaking down the door. It was good defense from the Red Bulls and kind of okay offense from Atlanta. They're still working through how to click up top for sure.
Yeah, I kind of wonder with Atlanta if this is just me, like literally, like I just had this thought, so kind of bear with me on this, listener. I kind of wonder if you've got too many guys who are looking to score goals rather than trying to set people up for goals. If that makes any sense, I don't know. It seems kind of once again like watching Atlanta, like it's a bunch of dudes playing. Like there's not they don't seem like they know where each other's going to be or where they're supposed to go. I mean, there's an understanding of the system, but there's no understanding of how the individuals operate within that. And so, yeah, that's one that, again, I'm sure quality rises to the top, but believe it or not, honestly, Atlanta concerns me more than Austin does, as to whether or not that's actually going to gel, which is crazy to say because Latte Loth and Miguel Almiron are just that amazing by themselves. But, yeah.
What you're saying, I've got a perfect analogy that I think will really help the listeners here. You're saying that the difference between Atlanta is that right now you expect them to be like Gavin's Tuesday League matches for soccer, where everyone knows that Gavin is the guy that scores goals, get the ball to Gavin. But his Sunday League, where he goes and he plays with 10 other people on his team at a time, and everyone except the goalkeeper, and sometimes the goalkeeper as well, all want to score. And it doesn't work.
Sure, Russell, we'll go with that.
I have never heard a more perfect analogy in my life, actually. Like, I'm actually ashamed I didn't come up with that.
Wow. If you, much like me, like to bother Gavin on Sundays before he goes to play soccer, and then you find out that Gavin plays soccer on Sundays, which he's never mentioned ever prior to this past Sunday, then you too could come up with this analogy, Beau.
But to be fair, Russell, this is why you get paid tens and tens of dollars. So
tens and tens of cents. We're not in this for the money. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna move us on to a match that had a lot more in the way of action, and I'm gonna give it to, and I don't know if he's our resident Dallas fan or Chicago Fire fan because he's got a Chicago Fire player jersey hanging behind him on camera. Beau, hit us with a quick synopsis of this, and then Gavin, I'll read something off from Tim afterwards. But Beau, take us away first.
Yeah, this was a really interesting game. Battle for the Brimstone Cup, which is a weird trophy because Lamar Hunt owned both of these teams. So whenever they played, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, FC Dallas was up 1-0 in the second half. Seemed like they were actually going pretty well. Coach Eric Quill made some changes, decided that he was going to try to play a little more possession base. And then the wheels fell off. Not only did the wheels fall off, it then just skittered and tumbled. And is skittered a word? Skittered.
Skittered is a word.
Skittered. I thought so. Okay.
I don't know if it's the right word, but I can confirm it's a word.
Okay. It turned into a flaming car crash really quickly. Maybe that's just a little more to the point. I thought that FC Dallas was going to dominate the game whenever Kellen Acosta pulled up with a pretty bad hamstring injury in the first half, which Kellen Acosta, even after the game, like he was walking slow and it was very ginger. So I think that one's going to, for you Fire fans, I'm telling you, that one's going to take some time to heal. He's going to be out for a while. But no, it just honestly, all three goals, it was silly defensive mistakes. It was people shutting off. I mean, it was defenders shutting off and sometimes it was literally just half a second. Like in the case of I think it was the third goal with, no, that was the second goal with Marco Farfan. Literally just half second shutting off, losing your man, and boom, that was it. That was second goal. The Gutman goal, the first one, again, Shaq Moore kind of loses sight of him, and then Gutman gets in. I mean, it was kind of a 50-50 ball. It's one of those that I think if you play that 10 times, Gutman maybe scores that once or twice kind of thing. But again, Gutman's just a beast. But yeah, I was really excited because you guys know I've been saying all year long I'm a big Jonathan Bamba fan, and I really like seeing players that I like in person because you can watch them. Whenever you're watching a game on TV, they're always following the ball. But you could tell a lot about a player. Like I always tell the soccer teams that I coach, the game is won and lost off of the ball. It's what the players do off of the ball that matters most. And so getting to see those guys actually in person, that the camera doesn't show, is just really, really fun to watch.
And did Bamba deliver or did he disappoint, Beau?
FC Dallas deliberately tried to mark him out. Like it was very clear, like, hey, this is, that's the thing was Zinkernagel was hurt. I mean, it's one thing for Chicago. I was expecting a much more dominant performance, and I was actually talking with Tim on this too. I was expecting a much more dominant performance considering the injuries that the Fire had. I mean, literally, it's like Greg Berhalter must have recently desecrated a Native American burial ground. That's the only reason for why just all these guys keep getting hurt. It's crazy. So I was expecting a much more dominating performance out of FC Dallas, especially the midfield, but it was very much not that. So Bamba, the one thing I noticed is, I think it was the second goal or first goal, but Bamba's the one who plays the ball into a deep through ball, splits 5 different defenders into Kuipers, who then passes it off. And so it was one of those that in that game, he wasn't necessarily the assist, but he's the pass that sets up the assist. The one that's the ball that it doesn't show up in the highlights, but if you're watching the game and watching the player, it's literally not happening without him. But yeah, for FC Dallas, honestly, it's silly mistakes. And Sebastian Ibiaga on that PK, I don't know if you guys saw that. I mean, literally, not even close to the ball, takes Kuipers out, and then looks like it's the most shocking thing. It's one of those, if you haven't seen it, it's worth going back just to see the look on Ibiaga's face whenever it's called a penalty. You would have thought that someone had shot a puppy in front of him. That level of shock. But it was one of the most clear and obvious. So with Dallas, again, I keep trying to tell myself it's just early in the season, but this defense isn't that. Anyway, I'll stop.
Just keep telling yourself it's only week 3. But, we'll listen to Tim as well. Beau gets to be graced by Tim's knowledge, and now you, the listeners, get to be graced as well. Tim, you can find him on social media at Sing Electric. You can also find him at Men in Red 97 for some of his excellent work. Tim writes about the Fire. Says, the Fire played FC Dallas on a cool, rainy night in Frisco, Texas with the Brimstone Cup, the Fire's first chance at any kind of hardware, on the line. They went down by a goal in the 57th minute after a scoreless first half, but came alive in the final 10 minutes and walked out with a 3-1 victory. First win for Berhalter with the team, keeping the Brimstone Cup in Chicago. Impressions on the match? It was overall a gutsy, confident win, but also a costly one. Already missing 8 players, including 4 starters. The Fire lost captain and Texas native Kellen Acosta in the first half hour. Tim noted that after the match, he asked Greg Berhalter how concerned he was with midfield depth with Acosta joining Kwame on the Fire's injured list, and he said on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm like a 9.5. So there you go. That's a bold statement. Berhalter went on to say the team is looking to supplement the midfield core, but said it isn't likely to happen in the next week, meaning he'll have to get creative when the team faces Toronto on Saturday in the first MLS match hosted in Canada this season between a Canadian and an American team. Very fun fact there. And actually, that does seem to track. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on there. I don't know if you're a Toronto fan what goes on there, though. That one's going to be interesting to watch. All right. Beau, Gavin, any other thoughts on that? If not, I'm going to move us on to our next match of the night.
Next match.
All right. Next match. Well, I'm glad you asked, Beau, because we have Nashville versus Portland. Holy moly, guys, you may not believe me when I say this, okay? Nashville, they didn't just do the thing that they do where they only score one goal. They did it twice. They scored 2 goals in the same match. That said, really, like, I think for me, one of the biggest things that I really enjoyed about this match, though, was the fact that Nashville, known for being very conservative, very boring under Gary Ball, now with BJ Callahan, Nashville had like 21, 22, 23, somewhere in there, shots on the night, and like half those were on target. That's incredible. That's probably 2 or 3 matches worth for them last year. So, I mean, like, if you're a fan, right, like, that's very obviously already good signs. One negative, teeny tiny negative, okay, it's not much of a criticism, but, and I really have to nitpick on this one, Nashville did miss 2 penalty kicks, so can't be doing that. You know, it's not great to get 2 goals and be like, oh yeah, Nashville won 2-0. They had 2 penalty kicks, and people be like, oh, he must have scored them. Wrong, missed both of them.
Yeah, maybe some hope for Nashville, but the one thing just to remember as a Nashville fan is that you played Portland. So Portland's kind of seems to be the Western Conference Toronto.
Yeah, well, you know what? Hey, Beau, we can just tell ourselves it's only week 3.
It is week 3, but one thing I'll say is that with Portland, it's been a long time at this level since I've seen a team this defensively undisciplined. I mean, red cards, yellow cards, stupid fouls in the box. And it's just, I don't know if it's a culture thing that they're being told to be aggressive or if it's they're going after certain. I really don't know. Like, I'm having difficulty explaining because it is just, there's some real boneheaded moves. And it's not just once. Like, I mean, literally, like 2 out of the 3 games have been affected heavily off of just silly, stupid defensive mistakes. And you would hope that they're learning from that, but you know, the first one you're like, okay, but this time they did it twice. It's actually getting worse. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of inexplicable at this point.
Yeah, well, equally inexplicable, right? I don't have the answers to that, and I don't have the answers as well, apparently, to DaCosta with Portland. This was, look, replacing Evander was going to be a tall ask, no matter who you got, right? And yet, every time I was watching DaCosta, it was because I was noticing him doing something that I'm like, ooh. Like, I saw him take a bunch of set pieces. Was not impressed with that. And, like, when you have a scoreless match for Portland, right? And the same guy keeps taking these set pieces and keeps either sending it, 25 feet over goal or not putting it on target or not getting it to anyone in the box. It's just like, these are all opportunities that could have been converted into something. They could have been threatening pieces, right? None of that happened under DaCosta with the set piece delivery.
The only thing that I can say about DaCosta, and which is a positive, is that almost every other single new signing in MLS had preseason. They had months to adjust because you have to remember these guys are coming to a brand new culture, brand new language. I mean, literally everything is different in the way that the U.S. operates. Yeah, I mean, not just on the field, but off the field as well. So this guy's had a couple weeks. So that's the only thing I'll say with DaCosta. At least the hope is that he's probably only going to go up because I mean this guy's dealing with a lot, both on the field but also off the field as well.
He's dealing with having to play for Portland as well. So maybe only other item to note here, and Beau, I'm sure you noticed this as well. Pantemis saved 2 penalty kicks, and yet the first goal he lets in was a horrific near post weak, slow shot. So like you did all the work
It
to give
wasn't.
yourself that.
It wasn't that slow. He should
It
have
wasn't
saved
that
it.
quick.
He should have saved it. It literally goes under his foot. That's not me using like a euphemism or anything. The ball goes under his foot. But yeah, he'll be disappointed with that for sure.
Yeah, well said.
Yes. All right. Well, hey, let's keep it moving here. We're gonna move over to Vancouver versus Montreal. Gavin, you seem to have the love affair this year with Vancouver. Again, friendship ended. Now I'm, a San Diego fan. So you have inherited my mantle of being the Vancouver enjoyer.
Sure, I'll take it. Whatever. No, they're playing really good soccer, so it's a team to keep an eye on, right? 3 wins from 3, and I think the most impressive thing is that they're balancing CONCACAF Champions Cup, and they're still going out there and winning games. Now, we talked about before, it's not like they're facing all the best teams in the league or anything, but they're going out there, they're getting done. As we mentioned earlier, though, losing Ryan Gold is a huge, huge, huge loss. It was a non-contact injury for anybody who didn't see it. And he just jumped for the ball and landed weird, and he was limping heavy. So
I just checked, just inject on this. I just checked. Apparently, it is only a knee sprain, and he's only going to be out for it says several weeks. So,
okay.
as good news as you could possibly have.
Yeah, I mean, when it's non-contact like that, you're thinking like 6 to 8 months minimum. So that's good to hear. But still, how they get through this next stretch is going to be really interesting to see. I've said my praises on Pedro Vite this season. I thought he was good again in this game, but we'll see if they are able to cope without Ryan Gold. They were able to do it against Montreal, but that's not saying much.
It's not. You know what is saying a lot though? You guys, how many times have you watched Laborda on the goal that he scored, where he like wraps his leg around and like pokes the ball out middle of the air from the Montreal player and then spins and then recovers off the pass? Like, that was great. Cynically, I am shocked that the referee did not whistle that as a foul, saying, "Oh, his leg was too high. It must have been contact and a foul," and like whistle that off. But I mean, you look at it and you're just like, that was great. That was really good.
I have not watched that as many times as I've seen. I mean, Matias Laborda with that bicycle kick, I mean, that was perfect form on that. So, Gavin, I may have to fight you for the Vancouver mantle as to a fanboy for this year.
It can only be granted, not taken.
Okay, well, if he's not here, it has to be granted to me.
Yeah. I will say, Laborda's goal, just a theme. The episode title, I don't remember exactly what I titled it, but the theme of this week was there were some scrappy goals with the ball bouncing around in the box off of crosses and corners, and Laborda's was definitely one of those. So that's where the theme of this week comes from.
Very fair. Guys, anything else to say on Vancouver? We've kind of hit Montreal as much as they need to be hit, because
just a shout out to Vancouver for, I mean, I think every single person was highly critical of them whenever they canned Vanni Sartini, but Jesper Sorensen has come in and has had this team hit the ground running and hitting them at levels in which I thought that everybody kind of hoped. I think everybody for a long time was like, man, if Vancouver could just take that next step, they could do it. And he's got them taking that next step. So big shout out to the front office, because I think the rest of us, we all just got it wrong.
Yeah, I tell you right now, I couldn't agree more with your Beau. I was very, 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 very bearish on Vancouver after getting rid of Sartini.
I was very livid.
Well, and I'll say I had them last, I believe, in the West, so I wasn't feeling them. But when we did talk about Sorensen being hired, I did do a little bit of research, and I remember seeing that he did win promotion, in whichever second division he was coaching in, and you got to be a good coach to do that. So I'm going to give him, maybe I forgot about that in didn't give him enough leeway for him being a good coach. He's done great so far.
Yeah. Well, just for the record, now, so far, I feel like my prediction's looking good when I picked Houston to finish bottom of the West. Although LA Galaxy are making a really strong push for that right now with 0 points through 3 games. But
I don't know how
more
many
on them.
go in to get a point in Columbus, man. I don't know.
Probably a lot more this season than we've seen in prior years, but we'll see how that goes this weekend. In the meantime, we are going to stay out west. We're going to go to another team that I had picked as 14th. They're not sitting in 14th, they're not much higher, but RSL against San Diego. It is a 3-1 win for San Diego on the road. I'll tell you right now, guys, I picked San Diego on this one. I'm still very high on San Diego. I know some people, such as Beau, might not be as high as I am on San Diego, but I don't know. I think this was a pretty good look for them.
I think San Diego was pretty lucky to get 3 points out of this. Honestly, I felt the first half RSL was better, but definitely the second half, Real Salt Lake was the better team the entire game. I mean, they had, this is the note that I had, is that RSL, Real Salt Lake was the better team. You could tell. I mean, they won the battles in midfield. I mean, Real Salt Lake has embarrassing amounts of defensive depth. I mean, they have guys literally on the bench that would start on probably 20 to 25 other teams. I mean, it's crazy. But what it comes down to RSL is that they had quality chances, and they did not have a striker who could put it in the back of the net. Time and time and time again. Good chances, can't put it in the back of the net. And unfortunately, that's what stinks, is you have a lot of good players behind you setting you up for chances, and they just can't do it. So I think that until, again, watching the game, Real Salt Lake at the minimum should have gotten a point, should have gotten 3 points. But yeah, really, really tough to be an RSL fan. At least there's hope, right? Because you know that maybe you're just 1 or 2 pieces away. It's a lot harder when you're not even creating those chances. It's a lot harder to have hope for that. So that's the one hope I will give the RSL fans.
Yeah, my hope for RSL is going to rely entirely on Diego Luna. And I don't know. I don't know how sustainable it is to rely on a single player. And I say that as an FC Cincinnati fan whose team was heavily reliant on Lucho Acosta for basically everything.
Yeah, they finally moved last game. They finally moved Luna into the 10 role. He had been playing out left. And that had been freeing up. I always forget the name. The guy who's number 10 for Real Salt Lake. Literally can never remember his name.
Diogo Gonçalves?
Thank you. Gonçalves. It freed him up a lot. And I think that both games you actually saw that whenever Diego Luna was able to drop in, able to kind of wander and create, like it freed up the team a lot, and you're really starting to see that.
Yeah, it's, to your point, yes, it creates a lot, but it doesn't feel like RSL are threatening to score goals is the problem.
Oh, dude, they had great chances. Like they had more quality chances than San Diego did. It's just that San Diego has players that kick it in the goal and not to the side of the goal, and that's just something that, again, Real Salt Lake have guys like Peel. I mean, the guys coming off the bench are guys who, I like to think I'm pretty well versed in MLS, but they have a lot of guys coming up that I'm like, who? Like, I don't remember this guy. Yeah, I mean, RSL, the makings are there for a great team. And I'm not like you. I think that Real Salt Lake are very well coached. And the makings are there for a team. They're just that, again, it's almost like they need like a Chicho Arango type guy.
Interesting. I wonder if they could have maybe gotten someone like that over the off season, but
we're going to be saying that joke all season long. Sorry, RSL fans.
It's never going to go out of fashion. Not for this year. Well, either way, for me on the San Diego side, because I'll talk a little more there, I feel a little more confident in San Diego's attack. I got a little nervous when they had, Chucky got injured, right? And you're like, ooh, what are they going to do without him? And then immediately go in and have a 0-0 draw against St. Louis. And you're starting to wonder, like, whoa, they might be in trouble if they're going to be missing this guy for a while. And so putting up 3 goals against RSL, who, for their attacking woes, I will concede that they are a pretty solid team defensively, I thought was encouraging signs for them.
San Diego been a lot better than I think any of us have given credit for, except for you, Russell. Except for you.
Russell had the benefit of that preview he did with the San Diego Bros.
Great insightful guys.
Yes. And we did drop a deep dive episode last week, by the way.
Which, speaking of which,
San Diego.
Yes, go on.
Our correspondent corners, we have a couple guys in there.
Not only do we not have a couple guys, we have only one guy. It's the same guy who wrote correspondent corners on both teams. It's Mike there on Twitter. Mike was our former RSL correspondent, still follows RSL, but moved to San Diego and is also our San Diego correspondent.
Yes.
Well, it's good to know that his name is actually not also Mike, because that would be really...
Yeah, no, it's Mike and also Mike. Legally named, government name is also last name Mike.
I'm going to start with San Diego since they got the win.
Is that Mike or Mike?
It's Mike.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Unbeaten with just 1 goal conceded for the expansion club through the first 3 matches, 2 of which have been on the road. Even more promising, the newcomers have looked like the better team in all 3 games. Add in 2 open DP / under 22 spots, and the future is bright. Depth will be a concern as the season progresses, but so far, so good. And then for RSL, Mike says, somebody has to figure out how to consistently score goals. Until then, it's going to be a long season, and the team's ceiling won't be all that.
Those are words of wisdom from both Mike and also Mike.
He said literally what I said, only just a lot shorter and much more succinctly. So, props to you, Mike.
Well, Mike's got practice from being an RSL fan for many, many years. But anyways, Mike, thank you for sending us not just one, but both sides of the correspondent corners. MVP caliber corresponding right there. Anyways, I'm going to move us on. We're going to go to a match that I was actually rather surprised about. San Jose versus Minnesota, a loss at home. For San Jose, they fell 1-0 to the Loons. Didn't have this coming at all. When I was looking at it on the calendar, I was like, San Jose under Bruce Arena looking good. Things are going to be fine. Home slant. Minnesota has had some scoring issues. Think San Jose has got this one locked down. Disappointing by San Jose, I have to say. They looked really good through week 1, through week 2. The chances just weren't there for them on the night. And I don't know if it's entirely due to Minnesota's defensive work rate. I don't know if it's because of how they set up. I'll tell you, so anyways.
Jose did have Hernan Lopez out with a red card, who plays their number 10, and Amal Pellegrino was having to play in the 10 role. So, and then that was kind of the theme of the night for San Jose, was that final ball to get the good chance just wasn't there. And it seemed like they were missing a 10, which they were.
Yeah, well, that's a great shout that they were missing a 10, because it explains why all the chances weren't really chances on the night. Speaking of chances, though, just something to throw out to both you guys. Yeboah, I think both of you were relatively high on Yeboah going in. What I noticed is he had the hardest, in terms of like technical requirement, the hardest technical requirement shot he could make on the night was the one that he made, which was like the one-time volley in front of goal. And yet when he had other opportunities that should have been easier and he had more time, did not convert those. So I'm just, are either of you concerned about Yeboah? Like, or is it, no, it's week 3. You guys are good with it?
I mean, I think many players struggle when they have too much time to think, because it's like, oh, I could do many different things here. And you just freeze. It's always better when it's more natural, especially at striker. when you just swing your foot at the ball and the first thing that popped in your head works. Like, it's just much better, like what he did on his goal. So yeah, I think it's a common phenomenon that a player has too much time to think and he struggles. I'm not worried about Beau at all. He's got, what, 2 or 3 goals already this season. He's looking like Minnesota's most dangerous player. And Minnesota overall, they are looking like a really good team. They're looking like a playoff team. They're going to win a lot of games this season. It feels to me like they have a strong defensive identity, and it seems to be working right now. And so the more the merrier. And if Yeboah starts to struggle, then yeah, we'll revisit. But right now, I think they're fine.
Yeah, I'm also the one thing I will say about Yeboah was he was kind of in on goal, had a really good scoring opportunity rather than shoot it, chose to flop, and so was not a fan of that. The one thing I will say about Minnesota, and it's just maybe a slight concern I have. So if you haven't seen Minnesota, they are a very, very disciplined 5-3-2. They are defense first, and then we're going to hit you on the counter. I'm a little concerned, which, spoiler alert, which we're about to talk about Charlotte, that only being able to counterattack if they have another club in their bag to be able to go to something different. Also, in this league, DPs are huge. That'll be another thing that comes up again when LA Galaxy come up. And Pereira, their big number 10 signing, has been mid at best. I mean, he's been he came off the bench and didn't even really inject much life into the game, when everyone else is 80 minutes tired. So those are two concerns that I have for Minnesota. But yeah, but much more so than I would say Yeboah.
I like those concerns, especially because they help me drive my agenda. So there we go. Hey, speaking of DPs that come off the bench, Gavin, honorable mention to Orlando.
Hey, our DP started and scored. Our DP striker started and scored this weekend.
Ooh, nice. So he gets what, 2 of those a year?
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead. Let's move on to a topic that I know Beau has been excited for literally for minutes since bringing it up. It's Miami versus Charlotte. Where to begin? First of all,
I'm taking this one.
Very obviously dogs though.
Oh, the red card. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that because it's a red card. What is going on with these teams facing Inter Miami while up a man for like the bulk of the game and just not changing their tactics at all, not being more aggressive, just trying to, do the same thing. Oh, we're going to counterattack. Oh, we're going to, pass the ball around super slowly. Like the attacking quality from NYCFC and Charlotte in both games was dreadful. And it's like, why can't anyone just like turn up the pressure on Miami and beat them? Like, what are they so afraid of? Like, I'm thinking like go man to man, like get 2 people on Suarez and Allende and then go crazy. Go send everybody else in the box, put the ball in the box, go try and do 1-2 play around Zaha. Like, get down the sides, get in some cutbacks and go score some goals. And instead it's just so slow, just letting Miami get back into their defensive shape. And then they did the cardinal sin. They committed the cardinal sin. They let a goal happen. Right after kickoff even, they were all switched off. Brilliant play by Allende and Suarez. The importance of Suarez putting that in first time it's key. It's key to the success of that goal. But still, I don't understand why no one can even play well against a 10-man Miami, let alone beat them. It's honestly pathetic.
I think I may have an answer for this. So one thing that both teams lack in these two, NYCFC and Charlotte, is neither one of them have good number 10s in order to break down a team. NYCFC did have a great one, but then Santi Rodriguez went for a crazy amount of money. Charlotte. So if you guys haven't watched Charlotte play, Charlotte gives up the ball and the field. They're literally like, we want you to have the ball. We're even going to give you all the field that you want. We're going to stay in our little half, and we're going to hit you on the counter. The sad thing, though, is that now this is the second season in a row. That's the only thing that they can do. Dean Smith has not been able to help this club play any other way. So when you go up 1-0 and you just go, you literally just roll the ball out to Charlotte and like, all right, you get it. Now do something with it. This is not how they play. This is not what they're. I mean, literally, it is worst case scenario. Is Charlotte cannot go down a goal because they're stuck. Another thing you mentioned actually another note I had about building off of Zaha. Tim Ream is playing on the left with him. Tim Ream is not able to make those overlapping runs that Zaha needs. It is very much Zaha against whoever. And not being able to have an overlapping run to draw a defender, open up space, create space is really hurting them. And the problem is they went out and they spent a lot of money getting Tim Ream, but they have two really good center backs. So as much as I hate to say it, as I was actually watching this game, I had the thought that Adelson Milano, the center back for Charlotte, is probably going to be like one of the next big transfers abroad. This team may benefit and may get better when that happens, which you would think like losing one of the best center backs in the league can't really help you. But in this case, it does, because I think it drops Ream into the center, and then they're able to get someone more athletic who can actually work and play with Zaha in this case. Because the only other option really is to have three at the back, and that gets all kinds of tricky with the current personnel that they have. So yeah, I think that Charlotte is just a team that they've got one club in the bag, and honestly, this is on Dean Smith. Dean Smith has got to get better. He has got to find another way for his team to be able to play.
I mean, they were playing three at the back, right?
Charlotte plays usually a 4-3-3.
They were in a 4-3-3 against Miami? I thought they had a 5 back. Okay.
It all kind of got changed up after the red card, but Charlotte usually plays in a 4-3-3. Their defensive shape is more of a 4-4-2, but yeah. Right. Typically 4-3-3 in offense.
I'm thinking about it, right? Dean Smith, the strategy worked great in England, but it's MLS. There's no incentive for a team not to pursue an attacking identity, because you're not a minnow fighting against these Goliath teams, right? You're not you're not an Aston Villa of years ago being like, oh, how do we compete with Manchester City and Arsenal, and how do we compete with Manchester United and Chelsea and Liverpool? Like, you're not looking at it and being like, well, we need to devise a way to to counter these specific teams, because anyone can go out and get an attacking identity in this league. Teams are given nominally the same resources. So yeah, it is interesting. I wonder if that will be a future shift for MLS, is more teams shift towards attacking identities and shift towards three at the back with very aggressive wing backs going forward, or maybe even see 4-4-2s, with diamond midfields, or maybe even see some 4-3-3s. Although I feel like the 4-3-3 is not something that I see being overly successful in MLS near term, at least.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, a lot of MLS is kind of a copycat league. Whatever works, whatever seems to work for one team, everyone copies. Like whenever I think Columbus did 5 at the back whenever they won 2 years ago, and then sure enough, FC Dallas, Nico's like, hey, we're going 5 at the back. Even though it did not have the personnel for it. So, yeah, I think that formation stuff. I think LA Galaxy were running a 4-3. Actually, I know they were. They were running a 4-3-3 last year. Whenever they won, and they're trying to this year as well, which we'll get to in just a second.
Yeah, well, that second can be now, because we can talk about LA Galaxy versus St. Louis. Another one that I'll pat myself on the back here. I did pick St. Louis to win away at LA Galaxy, because, Beau, to your point, I don't think the LA Galaxy have the players for what they're trying to do right now, and it shows on the field.
Yeah, so before, I guess we talk about the game, which I mean was pretty brutal. There's a few things for. I think it's become really popular to harp on the Galaxy, and there's a few kind of notes that I have been thinking about today that I feel like are important. So one of the things we mentioned earlier in the show, in MLS, you are only as good as your DPs take you. Like that, like literally, like it's just in a salary cap league, you're allowed 3 high-end players, basically. LA Galaxy are missing 2 of those. Joseph Paintsill is out for 2 months with a quad injury. Ricky Puig probably won't come back until probably August. I think they think that he's going to be back, which is why they didn't IR him for the year and free it up. So, I mean, this is a team who don't have 2 of their 3 best players, and even just having 2 would change us a lot, right? Because I mean, being able to have Paintsill on another wing, because right now it's peck or bust. So, and even then they've also been hit really hard by injuries. They have 2 new U22 signings, and both of them are injured. Mickey Yamane is out. Like during their CONCACAF Champions League, whenever Royce subbed out, he was subbed out last week to an MLS Next Pro player who was on a short-term loan. Like, that is how bad they are hurting for players right now. So before everyone just decides like, oh, Galaxy, you trash this, that, remember that. Secondly is this. Last year, they pushed in all their chips in the middle and they went for it. They're the ones that hung the banner. All right, so before you get all sad and talk trash and stuff, if you're a Galaxy fan, look down at your chest at the gold star that's right there that no one else has. Okay? They went for it. Now, then they went for it in a way in which it got them in salary cap trouble. But guess what? Again, they're the ones that lifted the trophy. They have the banner. They have the star. So before, no one feels too bad for you based on that.
And as a player, when you win a championship that next season, it's a little weird. So you've reached your goals for the last seasons, usually. That every year you're trying to get to that trophy, and once you get it, the next season it's kind of hard to just come right back out and play as hard as you did, because you did it. You reached the mountaintop.
You climbed Everest.
Yeah.
But I guess to circle back around, though, right? What confuses me is that despite all these injuries that Beau talks about, which isn't to say like, oh, Beau's saying these injuries are big thing, and they're not. No, they are. I don't understand why Galaxy continue to try to play a style that they do not have the personnel to do.
You should have the personnel, though, in that with Marco Royce and Diego.
You should, but they don't.
I know, and they're having the problem with, if you watch the game, Royce and Fagundes were taking turns. When I would say dropping deep, I mean like 2 or 3 feet in front of the center back saying, give me the ball. And then guess what? Whenever one of your key attackers is back there, there's you just freed up a defender to cover up Gabriel Peck. It's a bit of a poop show up there, to say, just to keep it family friendly. There are massive issues, and I know that even in midfield, I mean they lost Dejan Yov. I mean, Marky Delgado was huge. I think that, and the new guy who they've got in, like, again, it's taking time to gel, and they're also young players. I mean, yeah, Edwin Cerrillo, like, yeah, he's been around stuff, but like, he's still a young guy. I mean, they have a really young midfield in there. And what I'm more concerned about for the Galaxy is that I don't think that Marco Royce should be starting. I think that he looks a lot like Olivier Giroud in that his best years are past him, and the game is moving a little bit. The game's just gotten a bit too quick or something for him. The mind is there, but the body isn't. And so I think that they may benefit from dropping it. But the thing is that there's no one to drop him for, is the issue. So the Galaxy, again, it kind of sucks. You got to ride it out. But again, we are 3 weeks in. You get Joseph Paintsill back in less than 2 months, and then guess what? all you have to do, Galaxy fans, all you have to do is make the playoffs. Because if you get Ricky Puig back a month before the playoffs start, and that he clicks in right around the playoffs start, that's all that matters. All you got to do is make the playoffs. That's what counts.
Yeah, spot on. Funnily enough, I think this was a better Marco Royce performance, even though he hasn't been great for them. He had a good shot that he forced a really good save out of Berkey. He also created the chance for Ramirez, who forced another good save out of Berkey. I mean, Roman Berkey had a really good game. Take nothing away from him and saying that LA Galaxy are terrible. Like he definitely helped LA Galaxy not score a goal in this game for sure. And then on the St. Louis City side, I mean, they haven't conceded all season. And one thing that I really liked that they did is LA Galaxy started a young right back because Yamane is out injured. And they went after that space heavily. And they got their reward from it. They have 2 goals that look exactly the same because they exploited the space in behind the young right back, who was a little too high, too early sometimes, and didn't have the legs to get back. Maybe he's just tired because he was doing a lot of running. And they get the ball on the left side. They pass it into the middle, and they get 2 goals from it. And I think that was really, really smart from the St. Louis players, and whoever on the St. Louis coaching staff called that out.
Yeah. And before we go too far in on St. Louis, we do have a correspondent corner from Tyler on the Discord. So Tyler writes in, he notes on St. Louis what a difference a week makes. While I'm not convinced this was the team's most well-rounded performance, which in Tyler's opinion, it still belongs to the week 1 performance against Colorado. It's 3 well-earned goals and make it clear that this was a fun version of St. Louis. Berkey earned every ounce of his MLS Player of the Matchday award, putting in a heck of a shift even by his own lofty standards. He was put in a few dicey situations with about 30 minutes remaining when a few heavily defensive substitutions threw the team's balance out of whack, but did what he does best and kept the clean sheet going for the season streak. It's 3 in a row. Summer trio of Teukert, Hartl, and Becker didn't just score, they were tactical highlights on Sunday, including Lewin, who usually impresses. Timo Baumgartel also made his much-anticipated debut and needs to slot into the starting center back role soon, as Josh Yaro cannot continue to be a regular part of the rotation. Plenty of questions still abound in Tyler's mind, but heading into Seattle this coming week, overall excited to be going and enjoying a 3-0 win headed into that.
Yeah, I really like St. Louis a lot. I think that this is a pretty promising year for them. They're one of the teams that when I look at they're one of the only teams I look at my preseason stuff and I'm like, man, I did not get that one right. They are very, very, very defensively sound and focused and structured. They are the one thing that I will say I think was it Gavin, you may remember, was it Teukert who had like 2 or 3 chances that were Cedric Teukert with St. Louis, who had 2 or 3 chances that really he probably should have put away that he just completely fluffed on that one.
I think one he should have scored that was really bad, and then another one which was kind of 50-50, and then he got his tap in.
Okay, yeah, because then there was another one where I think he took a shot where he had someone like wide open in the middle, and it's just, again, week 3, even though these guys played most of all last season together, so I don't think it really, the last half of last season together, so it doesn't really apply, but I think they're going to have to get a little bit better at finishing quality chances if they're going to raise up to the more elite levels, which they are capable of doing with this defensive system and setup.
Yeah, well, Gavin, before I bring us to the end of all of our matches, I'll give you one last chance to say anything if you have anything. Otherwise, I've got a fun question to throw your guys' way just to wrap up here.
No, let's do your fun question. Let's get out of here.
All right. You guys still remember our preseason predictions. So across the board here, team that you think so far you were the most wrong on and are going to have like an Austin moment where they come and like laminate it and be like, what were you thinking here? And I'll tell you right now, for me, it was probably Philadelphia, considering I think I put them at the bottom of the East, and they currently sit at the top of the East, and I'm looking like a dummy for having putting them that low. Beau is reminding me it is week 3, but it's not looking good for my prediction of 15th place.
I'll go first. I did have Vancouver in last place in the West. So similarly to you, I think Vancouver, I don't think they're going to finish first by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that they are going to be in a playoff spot and not dead last in the West.
Yeah, I had St. Louis out of the playoffs, and not only does St. Louis not going to be out of the playoffs, I would wager right now, if I were a betting man, that they will be hosting a home playoff game, and probably potentially making a rather deep run as well.
Russell, any you're feeling good about?
Look, I still feel great. Oh, I feel amazing about my Houston pick right now. I mean, I had a lot of questions, and I know our friends over at Keeping Tabs really, they really dragged me down on my confidence, and I thank them for that, because I think they asked and pointed out to me a lot of the concerns that they were having going into this season, and those concerns are still there for me. What about you, Beau? We'll go reverse order on this one. I'm not throwing it right back to Gavin.
Throw it back to Gavin, because I'm still trying to find my preseason predictions. I'm going off of memory at the moment.
All right, Gavin. Since Beau insists, what about you? Do you want to enjoy a moment of smugness?
Yeah, I don't really have a huge moment of smugness, unfortunately. I am feeling pretty good about Chicago Fire in the playoffs. I think that some people predicted that, some people didn't. But I've been pretty high on Chicago this whole off season, so I'm gonna say that I did pretty good there.
I know I believe I had San Jose in second, and they're sitting third right now, so I feel pretty good about that. The Fire is a really, really good shout as well. I think I may have been a little overzealous on Charlotte at second, but no, the one thing I will say, Atlanta finishing 11th. I think I was the only one of you guys that had them in the bottom half of like the playoff bracket. Feeling good about that, but I'll also, just because double down, I know I had Real Salt Lake as a playoff team. I still think they're going to be. I know Russell, Gavin, or disagree. I'm just actually watching the games, watching them play and do this. I think that I think they're probably better off, like, if I'm looking at teams outside, which is way too early, teams outside of the playoffs spot right now trying to get in, I think they have a better shot than Dallas at getting in the playoffs, because Dallas is just so bad defensively. And that's the one thing. Defense wins championships, right? And Real Salt Lake they could probably field almost 2 starting caliber defensive lines right now.
How many starting caliber offensive units could they put out on the field?
0.5.
Okay. I think Dallas could put over 1.0 between Musa and Acosta, though.
Oh, dude, you clearly didn't watch the substitutes that happened in that game. The guys they rolled out afterwards to let up 3 goals in 10 minutes.
Well, listen, you put one of each into each starting half. Hey, Gavin, because you and I were pretty high on Atlanta, last item before we call it here, both of us were very high on Atlanta. I think both of us still probably feel playoff team, but are we walking it back a little bit? Are we saying home playoff team, but maybe not as high? Still playoff team, but maybe not home?
Maybe not even home. Maybe it's just playoff team. I don't know. Third game, but
yeah, week 3.
Week 3. But
I mean, let's also not forget the fact that I think both of you guys had Cincinnati winning the Shield. Am I right?
I had Miami first, but LAFC winning the Shield.
I think Bryce and I both had Cincinnati winning the Shield, which I think jury's still out on that one. So, because again, they're finding gritty wins. Like, I think the Philadelphia loss is gonna be a 1-off or maybe a 2-off. So yeah, I think they might have another one of those still in them, but we'll see. Anyways, okay, guys, we are coming up on almost 2 hours for this episode. So well done us for being timely as always. We always try to aim for a good 30-minute episode, and we exceed expectations by a significant margin week in and week out. So really good work as always. Even better work to the listeners that have made it through this long of an episode. So you guys are the actual MVPs of the podcasting world. So anyways, with that said, just brief reminder, you can find the podcast not just on social media at MLS Now Podcast. You can find us online at mlsnowpodcast.com. You can find us, we have a Discord as well. So if you want to be in that Discord, hey, message us on social media. We'll get you a link to it if you want to connect to other people who are interested in following MLS. But otherwise, on the way out, remember, you can find Beau on social media at MLS Gamut. You can find Gavin on social media at LionsBlog1. You can find me on social media at Mr. Danger Russ. Guys, listeners, till next time.
Till next time.
Au revoir.